Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome back to Wood by Wright 2. Today we are going to be finishing up this mailbox post. Now if you didn't see it, I did a video 2 weeks ago actually doing the timber framing on this, but today I want to go through installing the box, the light, and then making the sign down there, doing some carving. Let's dive in and take a look at this. Let's pick this up where we left off last time. We need to actually make a board that connects the mailbox to the post itself. So this is a piece of white oak. It is a very resilient wood to weather, but it will be covered by the mailbox, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem at all. We need to cut it to length, and I was going to do a fun thing here with a bunch of different saws. And cross-cutting with these big cross-cut saws are a lot of fun, but in the end it's much easier to do it with a saw that is more appropriate to the size. So you can slice it to length, make sure it's the right width, and then it's ready to start fitting into the box. I just wanted to clean it up a little bit and get it ready for finish. We're going to be screwing it into the mailbox, or screwing the mailbox down to this board. But we are going to be finishing this with a coating of marine varnish. I don't think I have video footage of coating this with marine varnishes. It's just a block of wood. But I will be showing that later with the sign. So quick chamfer on all the corners, make it look nice, make it feel good, and we're ready to start attaching the mailbox to it. I'm drilling a hole that will accept the screws that we're going to be putting into it. They're Torx head, large pan head screws, and not pan head, flat head screws. Washered head screws. There's a bunch of different names for them. But we're going to drill through the board and then into the mailbox. And then we can put a screw through the mailbox into the board. You can see how this goes together. Once we have one screw in the middle of the board, then we're going to drill 4 more screws, 1 in each corner. And that way we have 5 screws going through the mailbox and into the board. You can see the screws sticking out a little bit. That's perfectly fine because eventually they will be going into the beam of the main mailbox frame. And so we can put in the other screws. And these were a lot of fun, especially the 2 all the way at the back. You had to kind of reach in with one hand and try and drive in these screws. Next, we want to actually work on the number sign. So the street number I'm going to have hanging off of the back. And this we're going to be doing a bunch of carving and other detail on it. We need to cut it to length and then cut it to width. And if you've seen one board cut to length, you've seen a million boards cut to length. But it's still always fun, especially with a handsaw. And whoop, I pushed a little bit too hard thinking I had one more pass, but I didn't. Now we can plane this down, and I'm going to use a regular smoothing plane for the edge, and then a low angle for the end grain. But I'm also going to be putting these chamfers on the corner, so a big 45 degree on each corner, making the whole thing into a hexagon, an elongated hexagon. And so we need to cut off the corners on this. And if you just draw the line and cut to it, and it's really darn simple. A lot of people really worry about cutting corners. Just don't overthink it. And cut it a little large and then plane it back to the line. That makes it much easier. So we can cut it down. You'll see there's a little tab there where it breaks off the bottom. Oh well, I'm going to be flipping around and grabbing a plane and planing it down. And I'm just going to use my smoothing plane here on the 45s and take it until all the saw marks are down, and then I get down to the line that I drew. Do that on all 4 of the lopped off corners, and then we can bring in the low angle plane to do the end grain on the end. And this is actually really fun. I love the look of end grain on oak. It's a beautiful wood for it, and the end grain just pops through. Yeah. White oak is a good wood to have. I don't know why more people don't like it, but I do. So now we can chamfer all the corners. We're going to put a very heavy chamfer on all the corners. Most of them, it's a block plane. You can kind of see how I'm skewing it, so I'm running up the grain even though I'm going across the end there.
There's blood, I didn't realize it.
And oops, cut myself. I'm just going along and suddenly I notice there's blood on the work, and yeah, that happens from time to time. And a lot of people ask me about my shoes. Yes, I do have a video on carving those, and I wear them every day in the shop. The most comfortable shoes you can ever have in the shop. Incredibly comfortable and protective. So now we can actually do some of the carving on the face, and I want to do a ring running around this with a V-groove, and this will be inset about a 1/2 inch all the way around. And so I'm going to use the marking gauge to draw a line all the way around, and this will be one side of the V-groove. And so just be careful not to go too far and draw this line inside all the way around, and then you have a line you can follow. Now for carving, a lot of people really get worried, but when you're going with the grain like this, the carving gouge will follow that little line that was put in by the marking gauge. And I'm actually just using a light hammering pressure on there, or a stabbing pressure, and it goes really quickly from end to end, and you've got the groove you're looking for. Really nice and straight, really easy, don't overthink it. And the stabbing maneuver, though it looks wild, is actually a very controllable way to do it. Then for the ends, I can't do the stabbing as easily with the going across the grain, as it will want to jump around a bit more. But doing it the old-fashioned way with a mallet and chisel works really well. So we can run this groove all the way around the outside, and then we can start to figure out the letters, the numbers for the inside. And I want to do, they're about 4-inch tall letters. Yeah, these were a little bit fun to figure out and to space out in there. So I'm going to head over to the computer. Once I actually grab the measurements, go over to the computer and find a font that I want, and literally print out the numbers on a Word file, print them out and make sure they're about the right size. And then I'm going to cut them all out individually and space them all, because getting the spacing right on the computer is very difficult, but I can space them by eye once they're in place. So I'm going to draw a top and bottom line that all the letters need to sit on, and this way I can make sure they're all nice and straight and they're all in the same spot. Then I'm going to use the glue stick method. I like to use this one. I know a lot of people really complain about it, but I really enjoy it. I think it works very well. Put some glue on the paper, put some glue on the wood, stick it down, and you're ready to go. It doesn't go anywhere as long as you put the glue on good and thick. I used a V-gouge to carve in all the corners. This really wasn't a necessary step, but I've done it in the past a few times, and it does help out a little bit. Then we're going to use, for most of this, is just done with a bench chisel, and we're going to be doing kind of a chip carving, but a very big chip carving running all the way around this. And I'm just going to follow the lines around and carve in from one side and then carve in from the other side until you remove the chip in between. And so you can kind of see here how I'll be going from one side and then I'll go from the other side. And I'm trying to cut down. I'm not, the first pass or so, I'm not going down all the way. I'm just going halfway or even less. I just want to take the top layer off. And then I can come back and clean it out. So we can take off that top layer, and it looks really bad right now, but once you come in and clean it out, it actually looks really good. Oak is a bit difficult to do this. It's very stringy and very wiry, and so you have all these strings that want to come off. But as long as you take your time and think about it ahead of time, make sure you're running with the grain, and whenever you're chopping in, you're not going and making things splinter out where they shouldn't be. It goes pretty quickly. On the big curved surfaces, I still used the small bench chisel, and I found that to work very well. On most of the curved surfaces, it goes pretty well, because you're not going to be able to see that small of a curvature. When I got to the really curved sections, I ended up using a gouge, which you'll probably see that here in a little bit. But it's more or less just the same thing. Chop in from one side, chop out from the other side, and then you'll get the splinter that pops out, and then you can go back in and clean it up until you get a nice crisp line down at the bottom of the large V-groove. And so I want that line to be close to the center all the way around. So here you can see I have a gouge. I'm just going to come in and clean up any of the stray lines left by the edge of the chisel, and then clean it out. And this is a really pleasing thing. If you haven't tried this, give it a try. It is surprisingly easy, surprisingly simple, as long as you take it step by step and you're not looking for absolute perfection. At the bottom here you can see I have a gouge, and I'm going to do basically the same thing, just pushing in and then chopping out from the other side. And just continue the process along, and you will be done before you know it. And it is really, really fun. Incredibly satisfying to watch all of these curls come out, especially when you get that nice crisp line all the way at the bottom. And to clean up all the edges, just having a good sharp chisel and working it down little bit by little bit. I'm not taking off a lot at a time. I'll just take off a curl depth, and then I'll come back in and I'll take another curl depth off until I get down to the depth I'm looking at. And this is incredibly satisfying to see these curls coming up and doing what you want them to do. Don't expect perfection, but you can expect it to look good, or at least recognizable on your first attempt. So give it a try. You might be surprised what comes out. Then at the very end, I'm just going to take a tiny little knife and come in and clean out any loose splinters and sharpen the corners, and use this as a chance just to clean up everything and make it look right. It's amazing what you can do with a tiny little carving knife to get into everything. And yeah. So now we need to take off all this paper, and this is what really scares a lot of people. Like, you glued the paper down, what are you going to do? Well, a lot of it just peels up because I didn't put glue over everything, but most of the time I'm just going to grab a card scraper and scrape it off. And that is the next step you're going to have to do if you want to get ready for finish, is you're going to have to scrape the wood down or plane it down. And so why not just go ahead and do it and go ahead and get started by scraping the paper off. And there you go. Nice smooth surface. Happiness. The next thing I'm going to do is really going to scare a lot of people, but I want it to show up more. So we're going to paint it. He's painting the beautiful oak. Well, only where I carved out. I'm sorry. I'm going to paint it a little bit. But we're going to use some spray paint and just fill in all of those lines. Let it dry completely. I don't want it to be any wet at all. I don't want it to be gummy. I'm going to let this dry completely, and then I'm going to come in with the plane and plane off everything on the outside. I'm just taking off a few very light passes to get everything down, and then you can see the lines popping out and the dark underneath it, and I'm really satisfied with how this came out. It's one of those fun things when it all comes to life and it's like, oh, ooh, it's starting to look good. And if there's any small imperfections, that's not a problem, because if you're driving by at 25 miles an hour, you're not going to see them. And then we can just clean off all of the paint that got on the outside with the chamfers, do a couple quick passes, and we're back to where we were before. So yes, I am really happy with how this came out. Now for the protection on this, I'm actually going to be using a marine varnish, and it is one from Total Boat, if I remember correctly. And I'll try and leave a link to it down below if you're interested on that, but I really like that for outdoor projects. It is a bit of a glossy surface, and you can get a post finish that goes on it that's not quite as glossy, or makes it more matte. But yeah, I really like this stuff, and great. It works great and lasts really long, so I use this for most of my exterior applications now. Okay, I've got a bit of a confession to make. When Luke was here shooting the video footage on this, we did just one side so I could get all the video footage needed for this. And then he left, and I flipped it over to carve the other side. The only problem was I carved one side right side up, and I carved the other side upside down. And I got so mad at myself for that, because it was just such a simple thing, just to make sure that one side was right side up, and the other side was also right side up at the same time and not reversed. And I'd finished all the carving on the other side, and I kind of got to the point where I had a couple options. Number one, I could throw the whole thing away and make a whole new one, even after I'd done all the carving on both sides. Number two, I could cut it in half, rotate one of the sides, glue them back together. But the problem with that is it would be too thin to then put in lag screws. Or number three, I could cut it in half and resaw the whole thing down this way and then put in another piece of material in here. But I got so mad at everything that was going on, I didn't shoot any of that video footage. So that's basically what I did. I did resawing and resliced this whole thing down and then slid another piece inside, and there we go. So now this is a good bit thicker, but there's enough material here I can put 2 screws into it and it will hang nicely there, and no one will ever know the difference. Except for those of you watching the video. Yes, everyone makes mistakes, but in this case I was so mad at what I was doing that I forgot to turn the video on to show the resawing and gluing it back together. So you don't get to see that, but here is the rest of it. So we're going to continue on from here. So after I get back from confession, we can now continue on with mounting this thing. I need to put in some eye screws, and we're going to take some calipers and measure the thickness of the shaft inside of the threads. And then I'm going to pick a bit that's like thousandth of an inch or so smaller than that shaft, and we can drill that in, and this way the threads of the screw will cut into the sides, but it's not going to be splitting the wood and putting pressure to crack it apart, because the hole is about the same thickness as the shaft that runs down. I'm going to turn them so that they're 90 degrees to the side, and that way I can put on the quick links once we get out there. And happy. I don't know why, I find putting in these screws to be incredibly satisfying. It goes really well, and I'm glad I still have some thickness here to actually do this with, because yeah, stupidity. So we need to actually do the rest of the varnish now that we put it on the one side and not on the other, since that was messed up. Oh well. But I found hanging it up in the shop actually worked really well, so that's one of the reasons why I put the eye screws on before finishing the lacquer, because it's easier to do that in there. Then we're going to take it outside and put it in. Now this goes down 34 inches, I think, was the depth I needed to go down to. I wanted it to go down really deep because I can't use any concrete. That was one of the codes. The post can go into the ground, and they don't have any amount of depth it can go into, but it just has to be down there and no concrete. Also, I had Julie come out, and it's not Julie here, it's something else. I can't remember what it is. It used to be Julie when I was in Michigan. But it made them mark out everything so I know where there's nothing in there. There's a water line about 3 feet away, but that is about it from there. And you may also notice we have a garage sale that was going on at the same time, so it was kind of nice to work on this while other people would come up. So now we can make sure that it is level and the way we want it to be, and then pour the dirt back into it, and we've got ourselves a mailbox post, and I'm really, really happy. I used some water to run down beside it so that all the dirt would soak down in a bit more, and then put more dirt in and pack it down in, and now the post will not move. I got this light off of Amazon. I would like to get one that's a little bit bigger, but it's okay. It works pretty well, and it's an LED with a solar panel on top, so it comes out. Now you may have seen this board from before. We're going to put in some 3-inch screws that I've pre-drilled down through the board into the post, and then we can take the mailbox, put that on, and all of the holes that we pre-drilled from that earlier, now they can show up, and we can drive those screws in on the inside of the box down into that board, which now you can see you can't quite see the board. And I love this box with the brass. It's so beautiful. Sorry for the fuzzy image. It was really, really hot and muggy outside, and the camera was cold from being in the air conditioning, so I came outside and it all fogged up on me, and it keeps getting more and more foggy. But we're going to do the same thing we did on the post. Pre-drill the holes up into the beam here, and then put in eye screws for that. And drilling up, you don't really think about it, but it is very... it's taxing because you have to apply the pressure, especially with a twist bit like this where there is no lead screw pulling it in. It took a serious amount of work to get up in there. Then we can run in those eye screws, and the ones going up into the beam were a good bit longer. I think they were 2-inch or 2.5-inch threads, whereas the ones going down to the side were only 1 inch of threads. I really don't need anything bigger, but I did, so I put them in there. Put on some quick links, hang it up, and that is it. There is my mailbox. So if you're ever driving by, say hi. And I am happy. I really cannot explain how this is exactly what I'm looking for. I know it's not perfect for everyone, but for me, this is happiness, and I am in love. So there you have it. I'm overjoyed with this. It did exactly how I came out. I love the spacing. I love the shape. I am really, really happy. This is a project that I've wanted to do for probably, almost 3 years now. I've been thinking about doing this and getting it all together, and I'm just overjoyed with it. So I hope you like this. If you do like this and you'd like to see more of the artistic videos, those are over on the main channel, Wood by Wright. And over here, we're going to be doing a lot more of the how-to and the talking. So I'm going to be moving most of the talking videos over here to Wood by Wright too, probably as soon as I get the bed done. And we're going to be having some fun with that. So let me know your thoughts on that down below. I'd love to hear those. Now, I have heard a bunch of people saying if you got to be careful of your local codes. Some cities have codes about your mailboxes and what you can put out. Some do, some don't. In mine, this is okay. I talked with them, but other places you may need to be careful about doing something like this. So just word to the wise, check that before you go and build something this big. So I hope you like this. I think that's about it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Oh, well, would you looky here? There's a dad joke book. I went to the bank and asked the teller to check my balance. She shoved me, and I was very happy I didn't fall over.